to the Progressive Mind Show,
Hello?
your
Yes,
number
I'm here.
one community building show in the world. Every Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. CST, live on Facebook and YouTube. Join us as we discuss pertinent issues that relates to you and
Okay.
I with your host, Alinko.
Okay.
Good evening, good afternoon, good evening again to our beautiful audience. This is the Progressive Mind Show. My name is Senna, aka Alinko. For the purposes of this show, just call me Alinko. We'll be fine. This afternoon, we are glad we have the special guest in our midst, and they will be helping us understand the topic that we have chosen today: democracy and Africa. We want to look at the case of the recent coup d'etat in Guinea, and so we crave your indulgence on this particular subject. Please share the feed wherever you are watching us so that we can together build our community by engaging in these conversations. Again, my name is Alinko, and you have tuned into the number one community building show in the world, the Progressive Mind Show. This is where we build our community through dialogue. We will be coming back to introduce our guests, but before then, let's take a quick break. When we come back, the show continues on this particular platform. We shall be right back. Welcome back to the show. This is the Progressive Minds, and we are going to be going straight to our guests to try to introduce them. This is going to be very interesting. Once again, we encourage you to share the feed so we can all engage this beautiful afternoon. Bear with me as we try to take off here. Good evening, and we want to get this. Bear with me. Okay. So this afternoon is a very interesting topic. It's a matter that concerns most Africans in the diaspora and on the continent. It's a subject matter that people ask often. It's a debate that we have in our communities. So we need you all to engage with us. You're welcome once again, everyone. You're tuned into the Progressive Mind Show, and today's discussion we have dubbed Africa and Democracy. Africa's democracy has come a long way. It has grown, and to be fair, we can say over the decades, it has done well for itself. The concept of democracy was not an African originality. Before then, there were several systems of ruling, even after the introduction and assimilation of a democratic system to the African people. Reports can say African democracy has shown some resilience, or I will say has proven resilient. However, there are cases we can exempt and challenges we can talk about. One of them is the recent coup d'etat that occurred in the country Guinea. So without much ado, I'd like to introduce my guest for this evening. I have Ni ARMAH, who is an educationist with the Center for Social Change in Ghana. It's a think tank group, again, in Ghana. And I have next to him is Patrick Bowers, Burrows. Patrick Burrows is a historian and a scholar. He is a renowned Liberian historian, scholar, all of that and more. We'll have them tell us a little bit more about what we didn't get a chance to say about them. And so let me go straight to Ni ARMAH, who resides in Ghana. Ni, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Please tell us a little bit about Ni. Of course, you work for Social Change, Center for Social Change. But what else comes with Ni when the name is mentioned? Ni, can you hear me? Yeah, I think we're having a little bit of glitch. Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, definitely.
Okay, so Patrick, you are a scholar and a historian. Who else is, or what else is Patrick?
I'm also a father, and I have a keen interest in how the humanities can affect society, because the humanities tell us who we are, and they also tell us where we have been in the form of history, or we're informed of where we have been. And then when we know who we are, where we've been, they help to shape where we are headed. So I have studied and taught, in the field of the humanities and history professionally. But my interest at this stage in my life is seeing how these can impact, Africans on the continent and in the diaspora.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If Professor Patrick is not studying and being an academia, what do you do to get stress out? What do you do to what do you do for fun?
Oh my goodness! A lot of the things that I do for fun are the things that I actually do in terms of my work. I read. There are certain kinds of movies that will kind of take me, out of the current frame. So I come back feeling fresh, renewed. Those kinds of things. Music is a constant, in my life. I'm not a musician myself. Sometimes I think I should have been, but all forms of African-derived music are part of my life. People who know me know that there's music playing in the car, at home, wherever I am. So that I just take that to be a part of, the everyday life. But it helps me, to process.
Okay. Thank you. We much appreciate that. At least now we have a fair understanding that the professor is not always reading, even though that's pretty much what you're saying. But there's some social life, just music. Probably taking a walk in the park or something. But Ni, can you hear us good? Yeah, I think we're still having a little bit of challenge with Ni's feed. Can you hear us, Ni? Okay, so let's go back to Patrick. Patrick, let's look at the subject for discussion today. We have democracy and we have Africa, and we are saying we're asking if it's something that Africans should practice. Per my intro, that conversation has really been going on. Some say it doesn't work for Africa. First of all, what is democracy?
So I wanted to push back on your intro, actually.
Okay.
You talked about democracy as being derived from someplace, and then we adopted it at a certain stage in our lives. And the way I look at our history, actually, is that in the region in West Africa,
Okay.
Traditionally, we had two types of systems. You had the empires. I'm thinking here of Songhai and Ghana and Mali, right, in the Sahel, and then eventually the Ashanti, kingdom and expansion beyond that.
Okay.
So that was one model, but the other model was a very decentralized form of democracy and very village controlled. Oftentimes, it wouldn't go much higher than that level, but there was a lot of democratic decision making.
Okay.
As a youth, I remember, traveling with my father, and you go to a village and people are having discussions in the palava hut, as we call it, in our region, right? So palava is discussion place, and there would be this kind of Socratic discussion with some of the elders asking questions to bring out the relevant facts and so forth. People have the opportunity to contribute. And then at the end, the decision making, takes place. So I think that there's a strong strain of democratic process. And the way I would explain it to my students would say, if they are familiar with the European tradition, European history, is to say that our empires were like the Roman Empire, but our village communities, governance system was like the Greek city-states. They were decentralized. So we had a stream of democratic tradition, and we can build on that. But it's about the people being involved in the process. And I think one difference between our model and the model that we are operating now is that oftentimes in the current model, the people's participation is limited to election.
Okay.
So you come out, every 4 or 6 years, you vote, then you're supposed to go away and go sit down. And now those who you elected will run things.
Okay. So you were saying that Africa had its own form of a democratic system. We had that system running before the introduction of the European style or type of democratic system.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. But we just didn't call it the name democracy.
Yes.
But we're already practicing. So
exactly.
How did we come up with a notion? How did it now be? How is it now that the conversation is not the general conversation is not what you just said.
Yeah.
It's, I think the natural belief is that democracy was imposed on Africans. We adopted democracy, and that is not helping, and all of that. How did that become?
Well, one of the scholars that's done a lot of work here is Mahmoud Mandani of Uganda.
Okay.
He has a book on citizens and some other titles that are relevant. And the point that he makes, I think, is a valid point. Oftentimes, when we make these assertions, right, we ignore the long history that we had, the colonial period, and the impact that the colonial experience had on us and on our societies. And so one residue of colonialism was the estrangement of Africans from the governing structures on the continent for hundreds of years. And so, you had the British governor locally or the French or whoever, and the colonial officials who were running things. And so our people, for the most part, sidelined. And what we have done, it's a result of the education that we've received, is that we then take the structures put in place by that colonial experience, and we say, oh, that's the way Africans were. Oh, that's African tradition. We don't label it for what it was, that it was during that intervention that these things happened. Are you following me?
Yes.
Yes. And so Mandani argues that we were reduced from being citizens, from being, participants in a system.
Part of the system,
yeah, exactly, to being marginalized. In some which we should be moving towards recovering, right? Some of those earlier traditions that are healthy, progressive, and so forth.
Wow. No, thanks. This is really that helps, because that has been the conversation, and that has been the general belief. If you talk to folks, even very intellectual folks, oh yeah, this democracy is not working, it's not happening. But so thanks for making us understand, having a very fundamental understanding of what democracy is. Where now the name democracy, I think it's a Greek word, right? It stems from Greece. Okay. What is the philosophy behind democracy? I don't know if you can help us understand. Nee, can you hear me now?
His mic is off. And
yeah. I just
take a break. Someone should call him and let him know.
Yeah. I'll do that. Jack, can you help us understand the philosophy behind the word democracy? Of course, you came from Greece, but what is the system behind it?
Yeah, it's about the participation of the people, in the process of governance, and so with the Greeks, they were very clear about who were citizens and what were the rights of the citizens, but their citizenship usually was confined to particular cities, So Athens, the people in Athens would govern Athens, but they had very little to say about Sparta or some other part, of what was the larger Greek community.
Yeah.
So democracy was very localized, and the more localized it is, or more decentralized it is, the more opportunity there is for individuals to be involved. You meet someone that is in the Senate, and you can talk to him on the street and say, listen, we don't like what you're doing, or keep it up, we really appreciate it. But I think to bring the conversation from the past to where we are now, I would say that in theory, we have a view that democracy is the antithesis of military rule.
Okay.
And because of this coup in Guinea, we are invited to come back to discuss the difference between these two systems. And the assumption based on theory is that they are antithetical.
Yeah.
Well, the reality, I would argue, is that for us, those of us who are educated in this system, we take the theory, but on the ground, as far as the average African is concerned, oftentimes people don't see the difference between the two.
Yeah. The reason why I asked this question is that, if you read a little bit about the Greeks and history and all of that, it seemed as though the system was created, that democratic system was created to control people more than to have them involved in a genuine political system and decision making and all of that. What do you say to that? Nee, can you hear us now? Nee, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, that is unfortunate. But Professor Patrick, you wanted to respond to this? Is there any? Do you know? I mean, I know you know something about it, but what's your response to that?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Did you hear the question that I?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Can you tell us? We were just talking about the background
of the concept of democracy as
Yeah. And we are losing you. So it's very unfortunate, because Nee was very ready and fired to engage us today. He worked. He is with the social change of Center for
Democracy as in.
Nee, I think we're having a very bad feed from your end. It's not your fault. It just happens that I think that because of the distance, we're not sure. Yeah, but go ahead, Prof. Is there any you want to respond to the fact that democracy was created to control more than to have people involved in the process?
West Africa, where we are.
Okay, I have to get him off so we can try and get the flow going. But Professor, can you want to respond to that? Do you think that it was a system that was created to control people more so than have them involved?
Well, I think every system of governance it has a certain degree of control, a certain degree of participation.
Okay.
And I think that the system that we have currently, it has more controls than it does opportunity for participation.
Okay.
And it's one of the challenges that Africans face at this time in our history.
Yeah. So no, thank you. And I'm trying to see how, if you can walk us through, maybe if you could just give us a synopsis of how modern democracy came into existence in Africa, let's say sub-Saharan Africa, and how African countries have dealt with it so far. Maybe just an overview.
Well, I think that we went through an experience where there were certain anti-colonial leaders,
okay,
right, who were committed to a system of governance where the majority would be participating, would be involved to some degree. They may have felt that they were better prepared to govern, but they saw that it was necessary to have the consent of those who they were governing, and those anti-colonial leaders were not only defined by their quote-unquote opposition to colonialism, but they felt a connectedness and a responsibility to reflect the voices of the majority.
Okay.
And I think that if you look at Senghor, you look at Senegal, there was an attempt to put a structure in place that would accommodate, those voices. And there were other, African countries, I won't go through the whole list, but we saw very quickly, once we transitioned into independence, quote unquote, we saw the intervention of the military.
Okay.
And we had that long history of military intervention, one after the other, after the other.
Yep.
And so we got to a point where people were exhausted with that. There were a lot of demands for change.
Okay.
And in that context, then, we were presented with this duality of people saying, well, we either go in the direction of what we call democracy, or you are faced with military rule. So which of these do you pick? And,
wow. Yeah.
And given our experience in Ghana, I mean, think about all of the different military regimes that there were. By the time it reached Champong, people were exhausted. They were fed up. He tried to make a what you call a union government and all that, but you had a lot of people protesting, professional organizations and students protesting against that. Nigeria, one military regime after the other. So we reached a point where the tide shifted, and said enough with the military governance. We move in this other direction. But I don't think that we moved in substance as much as we have moved in the direction of civilian governance in form. Now we have to move towards the substance. We cannot have ECOWAS, in my view, responding to the coup in Ghana. In Guinea, or Mali, and say, hey, we're not going to allow this, you'll be marginalized. Where was ECOWAS when we had civilian rulers saying that they're going to change the constitution so that they can stay in power for 3 terms or more? It could be simple for ECOWAS to say that anyone who presides over a referendum to change the constitution for which they would benefit would not be in a position to personally, do you follow?
Absolutely.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But not doing that, it makes the alliance and the AU kind of acquiescent in these kinds of backhanded changes. And when the public is dissatisfied and the public feels manipulated, then the military takes advantage of that dissatisfaction. Now you come in and say, oh, wait a minute, we are opposed to this kind of change. But I think there needs to be some guidelines put in place, some guardrails to make this democracy more concrete.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think the point you made relates more to sub-Saharan Africa. and it's very, very good. But I did like us to, if you can help us understand how democracy has progressed on the northern part of Africa, because their world seem to be a little detached from sub-Saharan Africa, if so to speak, because of their, I don't know if it's because of their proximity to Europe or their infusion of the Islamic religion or the Arab culture. So democracy in that part of the continent, we need some, I'll say, clarification on that, if you don't mind, some education on that. How has it flown? How has the journey been? How has the democratic system been in that part of the country, the continent so far?
Well, I don't see that difference so much. I honestly, when I think about Algeria, I think of,
Yeah.
Some military rulers, replacing one after the other.
All right.
You look at the anti-colonial leadership that came to power. Habib Bourguiba, for example, stayed in office for so long, like so many of the leaders in in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yep.
We went through a period where there were these wars in sub-Saharan Africa. Now we see what's happening in Libya.
Yeah.
We saw the Arab Spring as an effort, by the youth to introduce a change from the street. But look how that ended up being resolved. Or look at Egypt, where the same thing was attempted, and where we are now. So I think the patterns generally have been very similar across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a military ruler in Egypt.
And Gaddafi came in as a result of a coup d'etat, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Libya, and then he ruled, for a long time. In his case, did he tweak the constitution, the democratic constitution, to, of course, suit him so he can stay in power, similar to what some African presidents are doing now? Technically, is that what happened?
Technically, I don't think that's what happened. I think that Gaddafi came in and created something out of whole cloth. He said that the Green Book, which he had written, would be the guide to Libyan society. And so, the governing structure and rules were put in place by him. And it allowed, for the tenure that he had for so long. Right. But you see, it's interesting because a lot of African rulers, when it suits them, they point to certain things and they say, oh, these are our traditions. So for them to stay in power long, they say, oh, no, those are our traditions. But how do
you call that type of system? I don't know if you have to call it democratic or not, but a system where, for instance, Gaddafi's situation where, his Green Book, where he says, okay, this is how, the country has been going through some turmoil, whatever. I need to put some structures together and move us forward. So this is how the country is going to go. And he puts in measures where he rules for eternity until he dies. How is that also called a democratic system?
I think the word that usually is applied is autocracy. It's like one, I'm the head and this is how it runs.
But they were having elections, though.
Yeah, but yeah. And, that's the point that I was trying to make earlier. Okay. And that is we have adopted democracy, so to speak, in form, but not in substance. And so if you are going to simply reduce the involvement of the population to those moments of elections, in my view, that's not substantive democracy.
Right.
But in many, many African countries today, that's what we have. People are called out to vote periodically. And once they are done voting, they're expected to go sit down, be quiet, and let the people who know better, run things.
Run the country. What would you say to folks? Let's look at South Africa. Let's look at how things have been with regards to a democratic system practice in South Africa. They have not had experienced a ton of coup d'etats. Is that correct? Please help us.
No, there haven't been any coups since the apartheid, was removed.
Yeah. Can you maybe give us a deeper understanding as to why that region of Africa had some type of sustainable democratic system, even though poverty and bad governance and corruption has always been there, but they've kind of had that kind of smooth system running. Is there a particular reason why it's been like that for that part of the continent?
Okay, that's an interesting question, and it's a very complicated, question, and the answer to it will be complicated. I'll try to explain why I say that.
Okay.
You see, if we were to ask ourselves, how do you produce democracy? So there's a coup that recently took place in Guinea, and people on the street were jubilating. Many are expecting profound changes. They're hoping that there will be, significant changes.
Yep.
And so the question then is, all right, so what would you say is their theory of how change is produced? And I wish Nee was, part of the conversation, given his connection to the Institute, But some folks believe that if one man declares he is going to do A, B, and C, the head of state, the person who takes power, then he alone can do it. You follow?
Yeah.
So one person can pull it off.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's the case. I don't think it's possible. No matter how well-intentioned he is, but there's a lot of that hope, on the continent, that one well-meaning person can bring the change that we want. So to cut long story short, I would say that change comes from the process of people pushing for that change. And in the process of pushing for it, they are learning, right? It's like a school that you're in for that change.
Okay.
And that's why when I mentioned Ghana earlier, I mentioned the fact that towards the end of Achampong's regime, you had the students organized, you had the professionals who were organizing, the doctors and others. So by the time, there's an opportunity for change, the population is activated. The same thing happened in Southern Africa. As people were pushing against apartheid, they had to pull themselves together.
Okay.
You follow? And they were learning, what's acceptable, what works, what doesn't work. And I think that we're seeing the fruits of that process.
Yeah.
But if somebody's going to offer you on a silver platter change and say, oh yeah, it is, usually it's not substantive. It's in name. You follow? Yeah.
So others have also, so thank you so much, Professor Patrick. Others have also argued that the frequency of coup d'etats that some African countries have experienced and or have had to deal with, when you look at, especially when it comes to sub-Saharan Africa, Central Africa, had to do with Europeans finding a lot of natural resources and having a lot of interest there, compared to the southern part of Africa, where arguably, they have their own resources, but it's not as much as the reserve, the abundance of gold and diamond and all these natural resources in Central, East, and West. And that's why there had been a lot of these type of coup d'etats and the disruption of democracy in those parts of Africa. You want to respond to this?
So if we're going to try to explain, why coups happen or any phenomenon in society, changes.
No, I think I'm trying to see why we have had a type of somewhat smooth system in the south part of Africa as compared to the others. And then there's argument that the Europeans play a lot of role in this, and because they're not getting what they're looking for in terms of resources in South Africa, so they're not going there a lot to influence their governance and their systems.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that explanation. You see, South Africa has a lot of gold, it has diamonds, it has a lot of resources. It has, beyond natural resources, it has a lot going for it. It's probably one of the most developed, economies on the continent, right?
But not Botswana, Zimbabwe. They're not known for a lot
But-
of natural, unless you want to, yeah.
No, so then, there are other resources in many of those places,
Okay.
So my point is that if
Mhm.
you're looking to explain like why coups in some region more than in other regions, it's a two-sided coin. We can look at, say, okay, what's the incentive for there to be coups? But we can also look at what are the barriers to those coups.
Okay.
And I think in Southern Africa, there's a culture, there's a commitment on the part of many people to say, you know what, we don't want to go that way. We don't want to go that route. We saw recently where President Zuma has been taken to court, right? And he has been penalized by the court system. We don't see that too often in other parts of Africa. You follow me? For a former president.
Yeah, exactly.
So that suggests to me that there's a culture there of respect for the law that is not just on the part of an individual leader. That's something that is diffused in the society, including the courts, to say, it doesn't matter who you are, you will be held accountable. But if we are arguing that the West we can argue that the West is responsible for the coups, but the West in many ways has a hand in the democratic, quote unquote, governments that we have. They're invested in those as well. And the question from their perspective would be, which is more efficient? And so that's one of the critiques that I would suggest when we look at the democratic governments that we have. They're not in substance, it's in form. You look at elections, which is how we are picking our rulers, and that's the principal way in which the citizenry is engaged. Many of these elections attract money from outside the societies.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
All over the world, money is coming in. And the politicians don't hide it. From some of the smaller countries in West Africa, when it's time for elections, the politicians go to the ogas in Nigeria, say, oh, the election coming, well, what you got for us? But it's not just there. Money comes from the West. Money comes from elsewhere. So the question then is, who owns these elections? If we can say no outside money can come in, if the AU says that, or ECOWAS says that, and they put some teeth in it, it means then that if you're going to have to get, as a politician, the money from your own people, then you are more beholden to them. The U.S. doesn't look kindly on money coming from China to get people elected. Why should we be different?
But there's also this law of corporations being people, and we know the U.S. has large corporations that can pour countless of money into the elections to, sway it in a way that benefits some people or some very powerful corporations. So I think that money, in every system, there are people who have, personal interests that would like to tweak things to go their way. So yes, I agree with what you're saying, that in Africa we do this excessively. In the US it happens, but maybe the difference in the US or in the West is that there are more checks in the system that can limit or that can prevent the influence of this massive money that's being thrown into their political system or the democratic system.
May I clarify, please? Because my
please.
comment is about money from outside each of our countries.
I got you.
Right?
Okay.
And I'm saying there should be no reason why a tiny country like Liberia, when it's election time, is flooded with money that comes from external sources.
Outside the country.
And that means that outside the country. And that means then that the voters don't control the political parties or the candidates internally. Those candidates and parties are beholden to entities outside, not only of the country, but also sometimes outside of the continent. That's a problem.
Yeah. No, that is a problem. You're watching the Progressive Mind Show here in the beautiful city of Chicago. It's 4:47 minutes past 4 p.m. Central Time, and we're talking to Professor Patrick Burrows.
Mhm.
Did I get it right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Barrows. Professor Patrick Barrows is a historian, is a scholar in history and humanities. He's also a renowned Liberian scholar. And we had ARMAH, who is with the Center for Social Change in Ghana. But unfortunately, there has been some tough technical issues. And so we're not getting his feed. We hope he can join us as we continue the conversation on democracy and Africa. Those who are saying it's not good for us, those who are saying that, well, we have to practice it. And currently, we talk. Professor Patrick is helping us understand, just get to how it has played in some parts of Africa, how the democratic system had played out, and we want to go into why we have coup d'etats, and we're going to use a case of the the Republic of Guinea recent coup d'etat as part of the conversation. So please feel free to join us. You can call later in the show and ask a question or contribute to it. This is the community building show where we engage in dialogue such as this to make our society a better place. So please feel free to be part of it. If you're watching on Facebook, you can share it now so your friends and your loved ones can also be part. We're on YouTube live as well. There are a few comments that have come through. I'd like to take them, and then we can go back to Professor Patrick for more information regarding this topic. So should who break cultures obey the same laws as non-Black Hebrew repatriates? I think that's a question. I don't know if it's particularly connected to the subject matter today, but if Professor Patrick wants to respond to it, that's fine. Professor, you want to take a look at this one, or you want to take the next comment?
So the question, the way it's framed, is it polarizes religious laws, versus the laws of a state.
Okay.
And the reality is that any state that one lives in the confines of exercises the ultimate legal framework, right? And that your religious laws are applicable within your domain.
Okay.
But the way I'm just saying in terms of reality, I'm not speaking, in theoretical terms. I'm just saying in reality, we have many, many societies today where the state is not monolithic religiously. Back, hundreds of years, centuries ago, thousands of years ago, you would have had one society that had only one religion. But most of us are not living in those situations anymore. So when we find ourselves in a polytheistic state, then the rules of that state govern.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Thanks for responding. And we have, before I go to that question, Nicholas K. Kosamang says, let's first understand democracy. Now, I hope that per his explanation or his breaking down of what democracy is, you got a fair understanding of it. If not, please feel free to call in or follow up on your question. This is from Ed. Ed, what's up? Hello to you, bro, and to the family. Rebecca says, great show. Astiwell Kanzo says, greetings, family. Thank you so much, Astiwell Kanzo. And this is from Max Selassie. I'm not in favor of democracy building in Africa as a prerequisite to change in Africa. I am more into institution building. Once strong institutions are in place, democracy will be more sustainable. What's the point of having a democracy when one does not know where and when the next meal will come? He has a great point, doesn't he?
Not really.
Okay, why not?
I see the question. Yeah, I see the question, as one of these typical polarization of issues that are not mutually exclusive. Building institutions is not
Mhm.
the opposite of having a democracy. Do you follow?
Yeah.
So some of us are just committed to not having democracy, period. And then we can match it up and contrast it to something else that we are more in favor of. And it's okay, if that's your choice, fine. But don't then try to generalize it, across the board. And like if you take the whole question of governance from the national level down to the family level, right? Even though there's a disparity between parents and children in age and in resources and so on, there are some households that are run in a very autocratic manner.
Right.
And then there are some households where it's more consultative. It doesn't mean that a child who is like 10 or 12 or whatever is going to overrule the parents. You're not going to have a voting system. But there are some parents who are going to say to the child, here is what we are committed to. This is what we're going to do. Now, what part can you contribute to that process? The reality is, the research is clear. The more open the system is in the family, the greater the participation is going to be of everyone who is there. The more consultative it is, the more cooperative the dynamic is going to be. A father who comes and says, it's my way or the highway, oftentimes we see the unproductive nature of that, with the children often being rebellious or being traumatized, et cetera, et cetera.
But is that not but
building institution with, sorry.
But bro, so to the point you just made, it's also true that there had been autocratic style of family structures that have yielded results, like the children grow up, right, or the members of the household grow up in fear of the leader, which is most of the time the dad or the mother or both. The dad and the mother, the dad or the mother or both, right? So and they have done well, right? You revere the dad, you revere the parents so much that you try to do everything, play by the book, and be upright. Sometimes make you timid. And you and I growing up, I grew up in Africa. I don't know about you, but growing up in Africa, that type of ruling system had worked for a lot of families. Yes, it made some people very timid, but it also put them in a career path, or put them in place, put them in our society, put them in places in our society that have contributed, that have made them very sound and successful. In that, you were beating, or you were scared, or you were frightened to not engage in social vices or some vices that would have derailed your career or your future. And so, isn't that system also good in some cases?
All systems will produce, they say even a clock that's not working will tell the right time twice a day, right? Because time is moving and the clock is sitting still. It will catch up with the moving time.
The moving time, right.
So every system produces some good results, some bad. The question is, what generally are the results?
Okay.
You follow me? Yeah. I can speak to you. Let me put aside the question of parenting, because people have their preferences. Usually their preference is based on the way I was raised. It's the right way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oftentimes people are biased towards the way they were raised. But as someone who is an academic, being in the classroom, the way I was taught was very autocratic. Okay. It was about memorizing. It was about, regurgitating. It was about the teacher knows everything. The further I went in my education, and then I got into the classroom, the more I realized that, no, the teacher doesn't know everything. And even though there might be an imbalance, the more you can engage the students in a participatory way of learning, right, the better the results. And it's not just me. The research is very clear that there are benefits from inviting participation of those who are engaged, in the society, the classroom, or whatever. They
Okay.
buy in.
Yeah,
Right?
they
That's
buy
the point
in.
I'm making.
Okay, they
But
buy in.
let's not polarize. That's the point I was making to Max.
Right.
Democracy and or whatever governance system you want to identify is not inherently opposed to institution building.
Okay.
Mhm.
Good. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
We are still on the case of democracy and Africa, and we're looking at how it plays out and how it has played out in Africa. We're still, enjoying the conversation. Feel free to be part of it. Some countries, we know, for instance, some countries that had autocratic rule, I would say, came in through, like, let's say, for instance, the Thomas Sankara situation. He came through he became president, or he came to power through coup d'etat, and before he passed, he transformed his country, not necessarily with a democratic rule, but it was a military regime then. Some would argue now that had Thomas Sankara not passed and lived with that type of, I'm suspecting it would have been an autocratic rule because of his military style or his military belief and training. Do you think that if he had stayed, that trajectory by which the economy, the Burkina Faso economy was growing, wouldn't that have benefited the people of Burkina Faso, even though it wasn't a democratic system that Thomas Sankara was using at the time, or was ruling by at the time?
Yeah. So from all likelihood, when you have you have a foundation and you see the trajectory, you see how this thing is going, it's possible to then say that if this continues uninterrupted, all things being equal, then we can expect more of the same. But I think that, to take the best example of producing change through a military regime, and then say, okay, then let's hold this up as the military regimes are good. But that's stacking the deck. So what we need to do is to say, let's look at all the military regimes that we've had in in sub-Saharan Africa, and see how many look anything like the Burkina Faso model. And the reality is that the Burkina Faso model, the Sankara model, is an anomaly. It was rare. It was unusual. Most military regimes were fiascos.
Okay.
On so many dimensions, economically, in terms of the rights of the population, so many ways you can look at it. They were disastrous.
How about the Jerry John Rawlings rule?
Yeah, again, I mean, an anomaly. Like I said, you can pick the cherry pick the good examples, the ones that produce some change. But with the Ghana situation before Rawlings came to power, please remember what I said earlier. Ghana had gone through a string of military regimes, and people were exhausted. When you have the students organizing, the doctors and other folks organizing to say, we are fed up, we want something different. Rawlings rode that phenomenon.
Right.
You follow me? Yeah?
Yeah.
People paved the way for the change. From what I remember, Rawlings had been imprisoned, and some of the soldiers sprung him from prison.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That's
exactly.
an indication of the buildup in the society, the desire for change. So it wasn't like a one man coming and shooting his way in and saying, okay, I'm here now, and I decree from here, this is going to be the way things move.
Right. And so you said people were demanding for change. What type of change were you think they were looking for? Were they trying to veer away from an autocratic system, or you think they were looking for more of a democratic, a workable, sustainable democratic system?
I think that oftentimes when people want change, they want concrete, specific kinds of things, right? They are looking at, the economy is failing. We've gone from better days to where we are, and Ghanaians are leaving to go and look for jobs in neighboring countries, in
Yeah.
UK, wherever life is better. We don't want to be home. So people are looking, we need jobs, we need this, we need the prices to come down.
Right.
Now, if someone comes to power, whether through elections or coup, if he says, I know everything, I have the solution. So now you guys are making noise about you want this, you want that. Shut up, I'll bring it. That autocratic style of doing things will produce a very different result. But if the regime is open, and in Ghana, some of those same people who were critiquing Achampong were brought in to say, you used to talk a lot about the economy and stuff. You have a degree, right? Come and be the Minister of Economic Affairs. Do you follow?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I remember in the Ghanaian experience. And so those people were brought in to facilitate the change.
Yeah.
But in many places, what we have seen is not a military regime that comes in and says, oh, where are the critics? What do you have to say? What are you desiring? What does the society want? Usually they come and say, okay, I know best. So be quiet, go sit down, and wait for us to bring it.
Thank you. It's 3 minutes past 5 p.m. CST, and we're still on the topic democracy in Africa. Professor Patrick, you are a renowned Liberian scholar. This is you eat this every day. Tell us how democracy and coup d'etat, the relationship between democracy and coup d'etat in Liberia, and of course Uganda, in that part of Africa. What has transpired, and what you think, in your own opinion, would work for the people of sub-Saharan Africa based on what you have experienced and studied.
So I hope you have observed that from what I've said, my concern is with the substance of what is being done, the engagement of the population, in what is being done. So I don't get caught up on whatever the label people are putting on these things, because many times the civilian regimes in Africa look a lot like the military regimes. Many times the players in the civilian regime are military or quote unquote ex-military. They take the uniform, Nigeria, Obasanjo,
Abacha.
Abacha was they take the uniform, and then they put on, and then they run and they say, "Oh yeah, the man now he's a civilian ruler." It's a formal kind of change, stylistic change. But the question is, where's the substance? And I think that if we look at our history of governance, many of the military regimes that intervened in the process have not delivered. They promised change, they didn't deliver it. They couldn't.
Yeah.
They might have wished to do it, but they couldn't for structural reasons. But the same is true for many of our civilian, quote unquote, democratic regimes. They haven't been able to deliver. They can't. Because structurally, they are not designed to deliver.
They're not designed.
We have to push. We have to change. We have to increase the level of participation.
So that comes from the lead. That should be coming from our leaders, right?
No, it should be coming from us, the civilians.
So the civilians should be calling for more participation.
Absolutely.
And be holding our leaders more accountable.
Absolutely.
Why has
many of these states call themselves republics? If you are a republic, that's what it means. The people, you are representing the people are there, to be engaged.
Good. But why hasn't that been the case? And why is Africa still experiencing a lot of coup d'etats over the years? And you said it right. I mean, people have to be involved. They have to call for change. But in Africa, it seems as though the more the people try to call for change, the more the security apparatus and security system is used, their own system that they pay taxes to maintain is used against them. And we've seen it recently in Nigeria. We've seen when people go on the street to demonstrate, we see how they've been treated. So how are we going to get to that sustainable democracy that you were talking about?
Yeah, very good question. A very good question, my brother. And because I'm a historian, I look at things from the long view. You see, and I know that change is not an event; it's a process.
Okay.
A lot of the young activists, when they get in the street, they want it and they want it now, and they think they're going to produce it. They're going to see the benefit of it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, it takes longer than that. If our youth were engaged with some of the elders, some of the folks who have seen things, for a longer time, or who have a long view of things, people would tell them, don't raise your expectations so high. It will take a little longer, for the results to come. This is not me speaking as a politician to tell you, be quiet, go sit down, but to say to you, if you're expecting the change right away, when it doesn't come right away, you'll be so disappointed that you become apathetic. And that's counterproductive.
Okay.
But you look at other societies and how they gain the things that they wanted. They gained it over time.
Over time.
Yes.
Like the civil rights in the United States, the black people, they fought for decades, kept fighting.
And yes, and black people in America are a minority, and they produce the change that many other groups are benefiting from. So then what about on the continent? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And they're still fighting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's a very excellent point.
Not event.
Yeah, that's a very excellent point. So you're saying how much more Africans who are the majority? We are the majority. We don't have a majority minority class. Even though we have the tribalism system going on, it's still all black people. And I think that you're right. If the people can accept and come to find out that it is us, actually, we are the ones that give people the power, we can insist, we can use our thumbs. But I think what we have been doing as a people is that we rely on tribal sentiments. And instead of changing power for the better, we keep to this person being from my tribe. So whether he's doing the right thing or not, we keep giving them the mandates. And at the end of the day, it doesn't. If it's not working, then a group of soldiers somewhere will be like, you know what, we have to go take power by force, and then they come in with a coup and disrupt what has been built, and now we have to rebuild all over again. We're going to go into the coup d'etat in Guinea, but let's take some questions here. I mean, some feedback from our audience. This is Abdul Sharif. Greetings to you too, Abdul Sharif. And this one is from Vincent Chikpo. Keep it up, guys. Thank you so much, Vincent, for your comment. And the Spraka says, Shalom. He has a question here. How is the people opinion disseminated? And he says, if literacy level is very low, it is hard for people to be informed, let alone organized to demand change, which is a long process. Excellent point. I think this is an excellent point. And literacy level in Africa is very, very low. Prof, you want to tell us why? Is this a deliberate attempt or deliberate system put in place by African leaders so that they can keep having their way over Africans, or what could be the reason?
Let me respond to Ernest's comment or question first.
Okay, Papa, please. That one?
He was asking, the people's opinion, how is it disseminated? It's a very important question, right? And so how information is disseminated will vary based on the segment of the population that one is trying to reach. We take the SARS, anti-SARS protest in Nigeria recently. Very active on Twitter. I follow on Twitter.
Okay.
And for the population, the segment of the population that's on Twitter,
Mhm.
they would think that, oh my God, we are winning or we have won. You know, look at all of these messages being retweeted, blah, blah, blah. But for those members of the society who are not on Twitter,
Mhm.
it's as if that information does not
Denied.
exist.
Yeah.
It's like the tree fell in the forest, it didn't hear it. They were not there.
Okay.
So we have to study the channels that people are using, the different segments of the population, and to reach those segments, you use the channels that they rely on. And there are a lot of different, channels like that. Word of mouth on the street, things like radio, they have a great impact on the man on the ground, more so than the youth who are on Twitter.
Right.
You follow?
Yeah.
The same thing I can say about Bring Out Girls Home on Twitter. Big, trending. Michelle Obama, Oprah, all of them retweeting. But then it just faded out after a while. People were expecting instant results. Go back to the question from Max. And I really, like Max's critical thinking. He brings the deep questions, and this is another one like that. Now, literacy level, here he assumes that literacy is a condition, a precondition for people to organize and to produce change. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But let me, again, I'm a historian. Let me bring some history here. We know that Britain and France, centuries ago, underwent a profound change in their countries, in their societies. I'm not using them, I'm not holding them up, as models and say, oh, we should be like them. I'm only simply saying I'm looking at how change happens in history.
Okay.
So you had the French Revolution, profound change. It ended the monarchy in France. And before that, British had their own experience like that. They didn't end the monarchy completely, but they curtailed the powers of the monarchy. How many people in those countries were literate at the time? The people in the West have not always been literate. Literacy, it has expanded recently. Public education in America, it comes from the 1800s. It's recent. So we need to stop making excuses, or because sometimes we see the average African as being deficient. And we say, you know what? Oh, our people are not up to that level yet. If we all have master's degrees, then we'll make no. Many of the master's degree people are so comfortable that we're not about to rock the boat. Fella said, me no want die. I just build house. All the excuses for why we shouldn't be active, right? We shouldn't challenge things. And so I think that literacy is not a prerequisite. I say this in part because many of my the older people in my family, my parents' generation, they were not that well educated. Minimal education. I'm not saying they were illiterate, but they were minimally educated. But they were profound thinkers.
Yeah.
Literacy and intelligence don't necessarily go together.
Yeah.
I'm a PhD, but I'm telling you what I know.
Yeah. Thank you thank you so much. That was very, very important. Thanks for clarifying and providing us with that explanation. They need Real News Network. Well, thank you, Ernest Parker, for your comment mentorship programs. Yes, we need mentorship programs. People like Professor Patrick, I'm sure he has some mentorship programs going on and some teachings that you do for the general public, especially the youth of Africa. I'm sure you have something like that going on, and this platform is one of the ways we're trying to use to connect with continental African youth and the diaspora, so that we can begin to understand some of these things on our own. And so thank you so much for bringing your comment, Ernest Parker. We're all good. Yeah, thank you. I think he gets you drove the point home for him. So historical narrative of our past helps us to navigate the present conditions. This is from the one and only Dr. Adamus Guy. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
You have a scholar and a historian here, Dr. Burrowes, an African and world resource. Thank you so much for your comment, Artemis Guy. If you want to call in, the number is 815-277-5047. 815-277-5047. You can ring and ask a question or comment if you want. We are going to let's take this comment from Max. He says, again, Professor is taking things out of context to take literacy to mean Western style education. I am sorry to say that the professor could be out of touch for our generation. Okay, Professor, this is your time to to respond to your student, or member of the dialogue team. So let's go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't feel like I'm equating the two. I fully understand. I think the difference between the two, in my definition, literacy means the ability to read and write,
Right.
no matter what language you're reading and writing in. And the reality is that, Africa has the largest percentage of the population that lacks literacy skills, reading, the ability to read and write.
Yeah.
But the point I made, and that's why I find it hard to understand why Max interpreted my comment the way he did. The point I made is that one, literacy and intelligence are not synonymous. So many of our people who may not know how to read and write are very intelligent, and in fact, some of them are wise beyond our PhDs. Exactly. So we need to respect that. And then secondly, I only was trying to indicate that literacy is not a prerequisite for social change. So I went historical and said, if we look at Britain and France, but let's forget about Britain and France. Let's look at China. Look at the way the Chinese are now. Look at where they started. When the change took place in China, the literacy rate was high. The Chinese conducted literacy campaigns, and the education, expanded and so forth. We look at Chinese society today, high level, they're doing nuclear physics, they're doing astronomy, they're sending rockets. That's the result of a process. But it wasn't a requisite for the change. The change came, and then the literacy and advanced education followed.
Okay. That the change came, and then literacy and advance follow. So in this case, somebody has to initiate a change. And in this illiteracy argument, it has to come from the top. Right? Our leaders has to initiate this change. Like you said, the example you just gave with the Chinese. Their leaders put in measures and a system to say, we want to increase the literacy rate of our people. And so when they did that, and you said they went out and did a lot of campaign, literacy campaign, educational campaign to increase the literacy level. And when they did, we're seeing the results. So does it speaks the same for, it should be the same for our leaders in Africa, right? The leaders should churn the cause of increasing illiteracy level in Africa. Is it fair to say that?
That's what some people believe. I don't believe that. I think that we are, as citizens, excusing ourselves from the work that is ours, that we have to do. And the change comes from our pushing for the things that we require in our society. And eventually, the leadership catches up. The improvement of education in China or in France or in the US, it came after people made a change, a substantial change in their country.
Okay. So
the governance structure changed.
Prof, let me ask this question. Max came back and says, thank you for your clarification, Professor. So Max, thank you for your feedback. Prof, before we go to the Guinea case, how does the illiterate who's probably intelligent and wise, but cannot read and write, help themselves to the point where they can read and write and make effective change in society? how do they literally do this or achieve this? Because in what you're saying, we have a lot of smart people, wise people in Africa, but we also know that we have a very high illiteracy rate, which is not being able to read and write. How do we change this? How do the people?
So again, if you see literacy as a prerequisite for change, then you say, all right, our people need to learn how to read and write in order for them to make the change. And
By
I don't
themselves?
see
By
literacy
themselves?
or to push, or to advocate for themselves, they need to be literate. And I don't see literacy as a prerequisite. So that's my point. I think that you take people as they are, and they, if they are respected and recognized, for what they bring to the table, then the sky's the limit.
Good. Prof, what would you say, in your opinion, is the prerequisite for the African society, or let's say sub-Saharan African economy, system, culture, to progress in the right direction?
One, we need to know the positive antecedents that come out of our traditions. We must recover the strengths, right, that were produced in Africa.
Okay.
It gives you confidence. It gives you the prerequisite to say, you know what, we got this.
Okay.
But when we operate on the basis of somehow thinking that we are suffering from a deficit, and then everything good is elsewhere, is outside of our society, it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things we need is to make sure that on the continent, people understand that Africa didn't begin just the other day with the Declaration of Independence, and that not everything in the past was unworthy. We need to bring some of those worthy things forward. I think that's an important part of it. But the other part of it is that African citizens, have a responsibility to be involved in shaping our societies, and we stop deferring to the big man to do it. Whoever the big man is, or woman. Now we're bringing that too. But the reality is, it's our society, it's our responsibility to be able to advocate for those things that we have.
So in a nutshell, so you can say that the ones who seem to know, or who claim to know, have to be involved, knowing that what we have, or as Africans, we do have valuable things. Ours is as equally good as anyone's else, and having confidence and valuing that, and literally helping to build our African society. That's exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And which means that those who know better, those who have studied more, those who are literate in every kind of way, would have to reach out to those who we think are illiterate to help become literate, so that we can all contribute positively to the society that we all love and treasure so much, which is the African continent. Wow.
Lincoln, let me come back to this issue of literacy for a moment, if I may, right?
Yes. I'm liking it.
Yeah. So you know what? Let's look at two examples of. I'll give you my own society, Liberia.
Yes.
There's a genre of music that has emerged in Liberia. It's called hip-hop. It's a mixture of hip-hop, but in local Liberian languages, right? Yes. And the beat is different because the African traditional beat is there too. Okay. But it was invented by youth in underprivileged communities. They didn't have money. They didn't have a lot of education. All the deficits that you could name. You said nothing good can come out of these places. But guess what? The creativity
is there.
The musicianship was there. And they seized it, and they created this genre. And in their lyrics, they are preaching unification. They're pushing, some of the messages that our society needs. They're pushing back against the politicians, against corruption. These are kids. These are people who you say they're not literate. They shouldn't have this. They don't have education.
Right.
They found their voice. They found their agency. And I use a Liberian example, but I could give you another example, which maybe more people are familiar with. And you look at reggae. Look at Bob Marley. Mm-hmm. The message of the youth of Kingston and other parts of Jamaica, Trenchtown, spread around the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And there.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you so much, Prof. And there are so many arts of ingenuity when you look on the streets of Africa. Young kids creating robots from used materials. Kids who have never been to school. Coming up with coming off with superb engineering, and you wonder, how are they creating this? That aside, I grew up in that era where we would make toys ourselves. We would create cars out of tin milk, and we were creative. So you're right. There's a guy making cars in Ghana now. Just to touch a bit on the literacy thing. There's a guy in Ghana who's making cars. His name is Kantanka. I don't know if you heard about the Kantanka car manufacturing.
I have.
Can't speak a word of English. I mean, it is what it is. But if you've seen his craft, you've seen his work, you've seen his products.
Yeah.
He's cars, all types of excavators, all types of equipment. He's manufacturing them now. The problem, though, is that I don't think that the government had given him the push that he needed over the years, compared to the Henry Fords that had a lot of government support when Ford started making cars in the U.S. And I think that's the difference. And again, that's where I go with leaders, right? I feel like if our leaders can just meet the people halfway, I think that Africa can make bigger strides and progress than what we have. I don't know if you have anything to say to that before we move to the next question or comment from the audience.
I don't mean to give the impression that our leaders, quote unquote, political leaders, have no role here. But I'm mindful of the fact that historically we have sold ourselves short. We have developed a pattern where we defer to them. So I prefer to put the emphasis on igniting our energy, our agency, and then, we get it to the next level. Because the case you just cited, consumers have a role to play too. And billionaires on the continent of Africa, they see an innovation like that. They could say, you know what, I'm going to back that guy. But we need that solidarity. We need the connectedness.
You are so right. You are so. I always tell my friends, you are so right, Prof. If consumers, if the people of Africa, let's say even Ghana, were patronizing this man's cars, he probably would have gotten somewhere now. He makes cars that are cheaper than cars coming from abroad. But guess what? People would rather import used cars from abroad, right, than buy brand new cars that is made right there in Ghana. And the car is tested. It's live on TV. They test the car. They drive it from region to region. But people are still skeptical because, to the point you made, it's like everything else is not trustworthy. We don't trust in ourselves. We don't. I don't know who gave us that culture, but we've been made to feel like what we have is not good enough. So. Thank you so much for bringing that point up. And there's another culture of. I mean, there's not another culture, but there is a culture of. No, let me put it this way. This same culture of reliance on leaders and someone else or someone else coming to solve the problem. There are so many communities in Africa. Ghana, I can attest to specifically because I'm from there, and I know, Prof, you probably will get this once I land. You go to some areas, and it's a litter of maybe diasporans or people who have lived in abroad who have come to Africa and built homes, like affluent homes, big story builders, mansions, and the roads that lead to these communities are deplorable, like dilapidated roads. There are no street lights, no social amenities, nothing. And you have a clutter of millionaires, literally, right? Or very well-to-do, or as a middle-income class folks who could have come together to form a union to say, you know what, let's put money together and make a street from the main road, whatever, to our community, so that when we're driving home with our cars, we're not going through potholes. And these communities have existed for over decades. And they are deplorable because the government has not come to build roads or has not come to install lights, right? So we have this culture. And I don't get it. How do you drive a Bentley on a very bad road year in, year out? You go into your mansion, and when it rains, you can't drive your car out because it's flooded in your area because there's no trenches to get rid of. There's no water ways, So we have this culture. It's bad. It's bad. I mean, and these are like very highly educated folks, guys who have money and been to school and have all the degrees. So I think if you work on these things, it's going to go a long way to help us. Thank you so much. Just wanted to get this point out because it's very dear on my heart. A few more comments. Treasure hunt. Okay, so this one again is from Max. Professor, due to disappointment by some on part of weak state of governance in Africa, have called for benefit dictatorship in Africa as a form of government for now. I am not one of those voices. However, I'm interested to know your viewpoint on this, please. Max always gets you thinking.
Oh yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. So the reality, the first part of his comment, it's a fact. People are disappointed. A lot of people in Africa are disappointed with governance.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the disappointment has to do with the weak state of governance, but depending on what you mean by weak, that could well be the issue. The fact is that they're disappointed with the governance we have because they are not delivering jobs, the substance of life that people want everywhere. People want these things. And then some people reach the conclusion that, okay, a benevolent dictator is the way to go. Well, I would say to Max, you might not be old enough to know this, but I lived through an era of benevolent dictators in Africa. What did it get us? So at some point, the society said, we need change. And we are in the process of changing slowly. But what now you're suggesting, that some people are suggesting, is that we should go backwards because this isn't working. So let's go back to the thing that didn't work before because it is not what we have now. That kind of thinking is anything that otherwise would be better. You know what I mean? What I have is so bad that anything else would be better. I would say no, it's not necessarily like that way. And of all the people who would say this, Africans should be the last to say it. We had dictatorships across the continent, from Mengistu in Ethiopia all the way across. And look at the state of our societies. Where is the development? Where are the benefits? If they had worked, we wouldn't be where we are now. So I don't think it's the weakness per se. It has to do with some of the issues I raised, people's participation in the process, them being consulted, and other issues like that. But not having money flowing from outside of Africa to elect people who are approved of by other countries, and then we are left to live with the consequence of it.
Right.
This is a problem. Our societies are being shaped by the infusion of money brought in from elsewhere in so many ways. We are the stomping ground for anyone who has an agenda and acts they want to grind, and they have the money to put into it. They are doing it. We have fundamentalist Christians from the West who come in and they say, this is the way you're all supposed to behave. This is the kind of government you should have. This is a society you should have. They put their money in. We hear people being elected to parliament who will voice their position. We had Islam in Africa for centuries. An African form of Islam. Recently, the Saudis decided, no. They want to remake Islam in their image. And they start pumping money into these countries to push their brand of Islam. And the result is that we have this new fundamentalist version, which is identified with the Saudis. They bought it, they paid for it. And it comes with radicalism, it comes with, in some places, violence. But we suffer the consequences. And so we got Saudi money washing around. We got other monies, fundamentalist Christian money washing around. When it comes to the elections, we have other people coming and putting money in. If our leadership is concerned about, governance, we need to put some boundaries in, some guardrails, and say no outside money should enter into our politics.
Absolutely.
That's one of the things.
Thank you. Yeah, we own the government. Thank you so much, Prof. And this is a response to the earlier comment from Max. Thank you again, Professor. I love and I'm enlightened by your explanation. Thank you again, sir. So I'll go to another. I'll go to John. But before I go there, quick question, Prof. Maybe you can give us maybe a straight answer. Are you in favor of democracy in Africa?
Like I said,
a democratic system. Are you in favor? No, personally.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that we have these systems in place with a label, to put a name on it, democracy, and say, oh yeah. So, am I in favor of that? I'll say no. What exists now, it lacks the substance that will make it democratic. It's in name, but it lacks substance. If you are elected, and we have in ECOWAS many leaders who were elected, and they are committed to constitutional rule. That's what they tell us. You sit there, then one of your buddies decides he wants to be in power for longer. So you will change the constitution to allow him another term. And you say, oh, okay. Or you play, we see no evil, hear no evil. We're not speaking about it. We'll just let them do what they want to do. At the end of the day, when this boils over into political violence or the military stepping in, you come in, you say, oh, no, this is unacceptable. You're breaking the rules. But your friend just was breaking the rules.
Yeah.
So put some rules in place where you said you committed to the democracy and constitutional rule. Then if the referendum passes that the tenure of presidents will be extended, the person who presides over that referendum cannot be elected, should not take advantage of it.
ECOWAS should step in. Yeah.
They should not allow these kinds of tampering with the Constitution for the benefit of one of their friends.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable. That's what democracy is about. Your constitutional rule, keep it in that way.
Good. So the problem is it's not they're not the people who are supposed to implement the rules of democracy, as you stated, they're not doing it the right way. The people who are the received who are the receivers are not also pushing, or maybe they're pushing but they're not being heard. So what is the way forward, Prof? Mike? What should we keep practicing the democracy as it is, which looks like it need a lot of work to be done? I mean, people are saying like you said, it's a process, right? It will take time for it to get to the point where we're all looking for. So should we hang on it and just work at it, or like people are saying, we are fed up, let's just go back to that autocratic rule, and we know that, okay, we have one leader and forget about everything? Where should we find the balance?
Yeah, I don't think it's that that easy.
Right.
Life doesn't boil down to either or. oftentimes we do that to make things simple so we can choose. But there are many more options out there. And I think that what it comes down to is Africans learning from our history, not the long past history necessarily, but just from the 1960s. That's not that long when we got independence. Let's start from there and go forward and say, what can we learn from these experiences? Too often our youth are convinced that life starts with them. Anything the old people did, well, we don't need to know anything about it. They failed. They wasted our time. So we'll start from scratch. That's unfortunate because there are important things you can learn. Even sometimes you learn, you say, don't do it the way they did it. It's still learning. So I think that the important ingredient is the citizens acknowledging our role and taking the responsibility, claiming our agency for what is to transpire, what kind of society we want to live in. And,
society.
We can't sit. Yeah. And can't sit and let money come from all over to reshape the society the way other people want it to be. And then we are just there.
From what you just said, this is how it looks. Hold on one second. We'll try and get this right. But you mentioned that citizens should play their role. And it seemed like they are playing their role by supporting the recent coup d'etat that took place in Guinea. You know, so is that one of the roles citizens should play? At least it looks like, and we'll try and see if we can get that video, and let's look at how citizens, you know, if we talk about citizens playing role, let's see. So as you can hear the desperation in the voices of the ladies shouting liberté and the people around shouting liberty, liberty, liberty. Is this, which is completely contributing to, you know, the coup d'etat? Who knows? They probably instigated it. They probably supported the leader of the what's his name, of the coup d'etat. So, is this part of the role that a citizen should be playing?
No.
Okay. So
when I say that citizens should have agency, I'm talking about something completely different from reacting to what other people do. You become a spectator to life in your own society, in your world. You are reduced to spectator. Are you follow?
Yes.
So you know, it's like you're at a soccer match or a basketball game and you're applauding for the team, but you're not playing. You're not on the court. You're not on the field. You know, I have friends who are fans of Manchester United or Arsenal, and after the game is over, the next day you hear them talking. They talk about how we won. Oh yeah, we beat them. Huh? No,
but you didn't. You know, but you were not part of the game.
Your team did it, but don't confuse your spectator role with the role of the player. And I'm calling for Africans to be allowed from on the sidelines to be players in the game of our society, in the politics of our society.
But Prof, you also know that some of these coups have been aided by civilians, like supported, planned around. The military folks are the ones that go ahead and execute it, but civilians literally give them the support. They play a part in this. Two, civilians have literally contributed to some of these. I've actually called for, in Ghana, for instance, it was the civilians that were calling for the blood to flow, which gave the military guys the motivation and the full confidence that, look, okay, we ought to go do this then. So that is part of the civilians' role. I understand the point you're making, that we have to get involved. But what I'm saying is that civilians can get involved in these ways as well. And when they do, is it okay? Because guess what? They are always at the receiving end of the hard economic hardships and the bad decisions that our politicians take. And so when push comes to shove, they say, you know what? We're going to push our military leaders, or we're going to call for that to happen. And so when they do this, would you say this is part of their responsibility, and it's okay for them to do this once in a while to bad leaders, to bad African leaders?
Alinko, my point is, a coup, by definition, is a change that is done behind the back of the society. By nature, it is a change that is orchestrated without the people's involvement or consent. Now, having one or two civilians put a hand inside, it doesn't change it. It only changes it if we are focused on whether the person is wearing uniform or they're not wearing uniform.
Yeah.
But that's not my focus. That's not what I'm looking. I'm saying the change that I'm talking about, the agency allowing Africans to be participants in our political game, is imagine an African country where no money from outside can come in to influence the politics at all. No fundamentalist Christians in America can send money to support their agenda. No Saudi government or Middle Eastern government can pour money in to support their candidate or their agenda. Huh? Yeah. So now the political parties have to rely on Africans. Imagine that. No money from the West to go into the politics. Suddenly now the game has changed. So if you are relying on me to fund you, then the relationship is very different. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But as it is now, we are spectators. We are called out to cheer for them if they are in uniform, or we come and we cheer for them when they take the uniform off and they're wearing coat and tie. But the game is still the same, and we are outsiders looking on.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Based
off the I'm learning a lot, and so we really appreciate. There are a few more comments that I would like to bring to your notice, but based off the recent coups that we've been hearing now to this most recent one, the Guinea one, do you think that even the fragile democracy that we're practicing, what is in existence in Africa now, do you think, how do you assess the future of it based off, again, this recent coups now? How do you assess the future of African democracy?
I think that to the extent our civilian leaders are committed to constitutional rule and democracy, they really have to do some soul searching. They need to go back to the drawing boards and say, if we would not want this kind of change, what must we do? And I would say that it is very clear in the Guinean context that the decision by the president to go for another term, which required a change in the constitution, was a turning point. It
Okay.
laid the basis. It caused a lot of dissension in the society.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not one takes the military ruler at face value, people can use the dissension, the disappointment as a justification to serve their own interests. That's true. But the fact is, don't allow these kinds of changes, self-serving changes, that are going to destabilize the society. So if you're interested in constitutional rule, you're committed to it, then you guys who are in the club, you need to be taking care of these things. Tell your friend, you change the constitution so you can run again, will not support you. We will put the pressure, that we are putting on the military guys. We'll put the pressure on you from day one, because we don't want military interventions anymore. But, I think it was Robert Kennedy who said, those who don't, they make reform impossible, they make revolution, necessary. And so they need to make those reforms that are required. You can't have the money flooding in from everywhere in the world besides Africa to get you elected, and it's okay. And then, African people are not funding you, they're not supporting you financially. Your actual funders are outside the continent. We need to tighten that. We need to, that's my comment.
Thank you. This is from John. Western democracy is a tool designed to facilitate neo-colonialist agenda in Africa. This is evident in French West African countries. It is time Africa start defining that democracy fits the needs of Africa. We can borrow from Western democracy, but we must redefine what kind of democracy would explore the potential of African for the development of Africa. Your quick response to this comment. This is from John.
Yeah, I don't know if John heard my opening comments about, the deep roots of democracy on the continent in Africa. That's where I come from. That's where my commitment comes from. But put that aside for a minute. He makes a claim about, democracy serving a French neocolonial agenda. And it's so easy, we throw these words around. But the reality is that military governments, military intervention, coup d'etats can also serve a neocolonial agenda the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there are people right now who are guessing, maybe the French are behind this coup in Guinea.
Yeah.
Because the guy, he used to be a French legionnaire and so forth and so on. So why, for me, I don't spend a lot of my energy and time opposed to, it's easy to be anti. The question is, how can we be pro-African? So you're fighting a neocolonialist agenda, and you say, well, it will come in civilian clothes. But when you look, it will come in a military uniform. But then we need to block the military because they are neocolonial agents. So then you're just going around, shadow boxing with any change that comes, because it could be this, it could be neocolonial. Right. My thing is, we have to look pro-African, and to be pro-African is not to say let African PhDs and master's degree holders sit down and design a system for us. I'm saying to be pro-African is to make room for average Africans to participate in our politics, not on election day alone, but on a regular basis, whether they are literate or not, etc. Don't let their voices be drowned out by money that's coming from the Middle East, from the West, from anywhere else in the world. Let the politics be decided by the money that is available in each country. And if the money is not long enough, that's okay. It means that the politicians will be more accessible to us.
Awesome. And is it also fair to say that Africans themselves have to understand that whether you are literate or not, the responsibility lies on you, the individual, to contribute to the democratic process of your system and not be tribal, sentimental about it?
Yeah, so the agents of change, the Africans who get involved in the change, they must be committed, to having to lock arms, to
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I'm saying
because that's part of the
this
change that we need. Yeah,
exactly,
it's part of
exactly. But
yeah.
in this aspect, with this, after the realization of the regular African, or I would say the civilian African, the reality is that instead of seeing things objectively, we are most of the time blinded by our tribal affiliations and tribal sentiments. And I think that it has been one of the major obstacles for us being contributing positively and effectively to the democratic process or the developmental process of Africa.
Mhm.
Your comments, Prof.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong,
And
please.
so,
I want you to
no, I'm saying that. So we had those divisions amplified by colonialism. You
okay.
know, the,
Okay.
the, the documents are pretty clear. The history is very clear. The kinds of steps that were taken by the British, colonial officers and the French colonial officers to govern, divide and rule, right?
Okay.
But then
Yeah.
after independence, the politicians maintained those divisions for their convenience.
Good.
And what Africans who are seeking change will have to do is to make it part of our agenda, change agenda, that we are not going to perpetuate the divisions which serve the politicians.
Awesome.
And when we
Powerful.
do
Thank
that,
you.
then
No, thank you. I appreciate the response. Just to add, Prof, can you give your perspective on the non-representation of Africa in the United Nations Security Council? Is this a democratic situation?
oh, absolutely not. A lot of the institutions that continue to run the world are extensions of like a supremacist ideology that
Mhm.
sees Europe and its extensions as one could say entitled to govern the world.
Mm.
I mean, that's the result of having power, for so many centuries. So the institutions that they created
Yeah.
always have that minority rule built in.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just the Security Council.
Mm.
And even though the nations that are representing the UN are supposed to be equal and so forth and so on, but the structure was created and is maintained, and most of our governments will not push for that fundamental change.
Right.
But what we see is that when other countries change internally and their balance of power is shifted, then they are able to get a seat at the table because they have organized themselves, they have empowered themselves. And so China now, it's hard for China to be excluded from a lot of different, institutions as they used to be. And in cases
Yeah.
where they are excluded, they end up creating alternative institutions within Asia, right? Where
Yeah.
they now have a bank that's like a rival to the World Bank. Not quite on that level, but the goal is clear that they want to move in that direction. So we haven't done the job of organizing ourselves properly and empowering our societies. And so the result is that we're operating within the space of colonialism, but
Okay.
it has a new name, it has a new face in a way on that level.
Thank you again, Prof. Because of time, we'll run through the next few comments quickly because our time is up already. Can you believe it? It's 2 hours already. And we really appreciate your time, Prof. So this one is from Dr. Akimus Guy. Please get copies of Dr. Barrow's books. They are treasures of information knowledge. My favorite is Between the Kola Forest and the Salty Sea, a history of the Liberian people before 1800. Thank you so much for sharing. I think I have the 4 books here. For 4 of the books. Now, if there are, I think there are others, let me know Actually, let me see. I think 5. I see 5 here. Between the Cola of Forest, as I said, between the Cola of Forest and the Salty Sea. The other book that I have here is Liberia and the Quest for Freedom. Liberia and the Quest for Freedom. And then you have Citizenship and Nationality in Liberia. And then the next one is From Virginia Slave to African Statesman, Hilary Teague. Then another one that I see here is Black History Republicanism, the writings of Hilary Teague, 1805 to 1853, founder of Liberia. This man is a real scholar. These are his books. Prof, let us know if there are other books out there that I haven't mentioned. Before that, Dr. Atama says, this is great point of proof to stating the first coup seems always to be the constitutional coups by the ruling elites. Thank you so much, Dr. Atomsgate. Last comment from Max. Professor, is it possible that perhaps we Africans do confuse substantive democracy with procedural democracy from time to time? Is it possible that our definition of democracy may actually be askew, since perhaps it may be in a Western context? And if you can respond quickly.
Yeah, I agree, Max. Absolutely. Your point is well taken.
Max, Prof agrees with your point. Thank you so much for bringing that in. Prof, please, you've written, so we've seen 5 of them, 5 of the books. Are there others that I missed or?
Yeah, but I would say, please you don't need to mention all of them. But if people go online and do a search under my name, you'll certainly see the other books. They're on Amazon. They're available from my distribution company, Know Yourself Press. But
thank you.
However you get it, yeah, whichever one you're interested in, that would be good.
Thank you so much. Last comment here from that one was the last, but this one just came in, so let me just read through this. I do not know if Prof is familiar with French influence in the French West African countries. Cameroon is a clear example. The divide and rule policy by the French has not changed even after independence. They have planted and continue to protect leaders who work for them. Is it true that African countries should take the lead to resist the West? But when African Union, it is true that the African countries should take the lead to resist the West. But when African Union is sponsored by France, what results do you expect? This is the reality in Africa. Your quick comment, Prof.
You know, as a student of history, one of the things that I learned is that our decolonization was anti-colonial, but it was not pro-African in many places. And there's a difference. To be anti is not the same, to be anti-European or anti-French is not the same as doing what we need to do internally. So a lot of our leaders were very skillful, the anti-colonial leaders. It's during the Liberian War, there was a story that people told, an anecdote. I'm not saying that it was true necessarily, but they said that there was a guy who had been robbing houses in the neighborhood, and one night people were on the watch, and as he was making his way, he had broken into someone's house, he seized what he wanted, but he was trying to make his way out. People began shouting, "Rogue, rogue, rogue." That's what we call thieves in Liberia.
Yeah.
And so the crowd of people came out of their houses and they started running after this guy. And he saw a random man running, and he started pointing at the guy and saying, "Rebel, rebel, rebel." Because during the war, when people called you a rebel, that was like the ultimate crime. So everyone's attention got diverted from the rogue, and they went and attacked this innocent person who was labeled a rebel. I'm not saying that the French are innocent. I'm simply saying that our leaders have been very skillful sometimes at, instead of doing the self-analysis and structuring that will be pro-African. They keep pointing our attention. Look at the bad guy over there. Look at those guys out there. I think when we get our act together internally, those other pieces will fall in place.
Wow.
My focus is there. It's on the ground. Are we who are anti-colonial, anti-neo-colonial, are we engaged with the regular Africans in recognizing the importance of their voice? Or maybe are we thinking that they are too illiterate, we can't listen, we can't talk to them? Because if that's the case, then it's a problem. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Prof, you have been an immense help to Africa. You are a global asset. We thank you for coming on the show and helping the progressive minds. Our community really appreciate you, man. It's been past 2 hours now, and we could. It's like we just It's like we just started, and you look like okay. You can do another 2 more hours. So we really appreciate you. We have to bring the show to an end. We're definitely going to have you again. And John says, thank you, Prof. Yeah.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you. Your last words. Give us your closing remarks for today, and we would rearrange for you to come on again so we can engage. Please go ahead.
Yes, no, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on the show. And I really appreciate the focus, progressive minds, because I think, if we can kind of engage in terms of community conversations and dialogue, and we're focused on moving forward, there's no reason why the continent will not change. I see many signs that are encouraging, the energies that emerged on the continent recently. A lot of attention right now is on the coup in Guinea, but I look at the anti-SARS effort in Nigeria, and that was a fundamental change to see the young people come out like that. They had a setback, they retreated for a minute, but I don't think that retreat is going to be long-standing. And we saw the Arab Spring, and we see Tunisia, and I believe that those signs are very, very encouraging.
Absolutely. And Max says bring him back, so we're definitely going to bring him back and probably talk about
Thank you, Max.
We're probably going to talk about these things that Johnny Woods just brought his comment. I am late. We'll watch the video later. Johnny Woods, you missed this one, but we're going to get him here. Thank you again, Prof. We'll take this short break. When we come back, we'll end the show. Please stay with us.
Welcome. Chris Toffee Financial Company is ready and available either group or one-on-one basis to help you understand different investment opportunities in America that you can invest in with any amount. The right college account for your children to withdraw money. We can help you to get appropriate life insurance that you can withdraw money or take loan. And if you're in the process of buying or refinancing a vehicle or a house, we can help by building up your credit score. We also repair credit by permanently removing negative items such as medical bills, collections, late payments, foreclosure, bankruptcy, inquiries. We also help all businesses to get business loans and credit by building their business credit. If you need any of our services, please feel free to contact us at 512-999-6724 or chris@christoffee.com or visit www.christoffee.com. Thank you.
Sorry about the break in that short commercial break. Well, thank you so much for engaging us this 2 hours on this particular topic, Africa and democracy. I just got a message from a friend all the way in East Africa, and I'm trying to read it. He says, I'm in East Africa and it's 2 a.m. my time. Great show today. This is my best show by far. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Maxwell, for tuning in all the way in East Africa. And Johnny Woods, John Oben says, bring it back. John. I saw your message today, but I'll call you. And John is one of our co-hosts actually on the Progressive Mind Show. Officially, we'll be outdooring him and another host. So the Progressive Minds is growing. We're expanding. We're 501c3 now. So your donations to us are tax deductible. We're encouraging you to keep donating so that we can improve on our services and our production. And as you may have experienced while we're playing the commercial, it was staticky because there's a lot of things that needs to be improved here in the studio. So please help us so we can grow and keep bringing you these very important conversations. I have enjoyed every bit of Professor Patrick's contribution and your contribution. Maxwell, Johnny Woods, Dr. Artemus Gaye, Selassie, Ernest Parker, and then who else? We have Vincent Chipo, Abdul Sharif, and my brother, my own friend Ed Dadzi, Nicholas, all the guys who came on, Astiwell, Cancel, everyone that came on. If I missed your name, it's not on purpose. I'm trying to find it. Sometimes these things find a way of hiding and I can't find the names for some reason. But Rebecca Mode, all of you that made it to the show and contributed one way or the other. This is how we build our community. And I'm so proud and encouraged that week in, week out, you come and help us engage. Watch out for another very topical and interesting conversation come this Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday coming 6 to 8 p.m. And then every Sunday we are here from 4 to 6 p.m. This has been your host, Senna, a.k.a. Alinko, with the Progressive Mind Show. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. We shall be coming your way this coming Wednesday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. For now, have a wonderful evening and stay blessed.